Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Did you know that in order to get your stimulus check, you had to have filed your taxes for the 2018 or 2019 tax year? If you haven't filed for 2018 or 2019, there's good news. The Tax Defense Group can rush e-file your taxes. They know that millions of Americans are struggling, and they want to make sure that you get your stimulus check sooner rather than later. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Due to the global pandemic and economic downturn, Writer Junkie is offering their resume writing service for only $100. And with a 3-day turnaround, you can't beat that price and delivery time. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Mention that you saw this ad on UCast Studios, and they'll get right to work. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Lakers Outsiders Weekly Podcast, brought to you by UCast Studios. I am your host, Gary Kester, here with you as always. And today I'm going to be talking about the NBA possibly returning sooner rather than later. And it sounds like it's picking up some momentum, gaining some traction, and we might have some basketball back here very shortly. So going to be talking about that today and kind of my thoughts on that and the different formats that might look like and kind of my thoughts on that and basically what I would do personally or what I would shoot for if I was in charge. So that's what I'll be going over today. But before, as always, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe to UCast Studios and Lakers Outsiders on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Podbean, wherever. Be sure to subscribe to UCast Studios and Lakers Outsiders there so you can get all of your Laker podcasts right away. I'm by myself today. Sometimes I'll have some guests on. Sometimes, a lot of times I'll be joined by Hani Ahmadian. He's not with me today, but so just be sure to subscribe to all those, and you can follow Lakers Outsiders on Twitter at Lakers Outsiders, and also Instagram as well, same at. You can like us on Facebook, and you can follow me on Twitter at Gary Kester. That is at GaryKester. And of course, you can get everything up on LakersOutsiders.com. We're obviously watching the situation with the NBA very closely as it pertains very heavily to the Lakers, who are the one seed in the Western Conference. And if the season resumes and there's a playoff run, the Lakers will have a good chance to go all the way and get championship number 17 and match the Boston Celtics, which I want more than anything, so that they can stop holding that over the Lakers' heads. And then I don't know what else. They wouldn't have a whole lot other than, I guess, the head-to-head finals thing, but I so badly want to match and pass the Celtics in number of titles. That'd be so sweet. So hopefully the Lakers can get 17 this year. Hopefully we actually get see a chance for the Lakers to go get number 17. It sounds like that is starting to become not only just a possibility, but a reality. The NBA here lately, they still haven't made an official decision, but there's been a lot of reports coming out. It sounds like we're going to get an official decision in the coming weeks, maybe by the end of May, maybe mid-June, an official decision on whether the NBA season is going to resume or not. It sounds like by all means that it will. They'll at least try. Basically, the things that we've heard so far, the NBA is kind of brainstorming ideas on different ways that they can do this while being safe and putting the safety of players and staff members, coaches, all those people, putting that at the forefront of any decision and making sure they can ensure safety and ensure proper testing and everything. So it's a very tricky situation for the NBA to really navigate. But, and a lot of people might be upset that they're not going to scrap the season. I've seen a lot of people say that it's not worth the risk. They should scrap the season and just focus on next season. But I know people hate talking about money and feel that, doing this for the financial reasons is selfish, but it's for the health of the league. I know there are different varying opinions on money and everything, but this, like, if they just canceled the season and didn't have a playoff run or finish the season or whatever they choose to do, if they just scrapped it, this would impact the league for years. To lose out on that much money, you're talking about they're already losing out on a bunch of money on ticket revenue, TV advertising, all that stuff. They're losing millions and millions of dollars because they're not able to play the games. They're not able to play the games. They're not able to have people in the stands, and even a playoff run with, I'm assuming, would have no fans in the stands. They're still missing out on money even if they do finish this season. But basically, this is becoming just trying to limit the damage. It's damage control, trying to crown a champion, trying to just salvage the rest of this season the best that they can, while trying to, take care of the league long term financially. The league has seen the salary cap just absolutely spike the last 5-6 years. I think it was 2016 that the salary cap spiked due to the new TV deal with ESPN, TNT, ABC, all those. And it gave teams a lot more money to work with because the league brought in a lot more money, a lot more revenue was there to share with the teams. And when you scrap a season, a playoff run where there's a lot of money, in playoff basketball, with, like I said, ticket revenue. Tickets are usually crazy expensive for playoff games, especially finals games, conference finals games, especially if a team like the Lakers is involved. Those ticket prices, I'm sure as many Laker fans that wanted to try and go see a game this year, I was very fortunate to go see a game when they beat Portland. Those tickets are not cheap at all. With LeBron and AD, and the Lakers being a contender again, the tickets certainly are not cheap. When you look at, I remember comparing them, I think, to the Charlotte Hornets earlier in the year. Like, I could get a Hornets ticket for like $15. For $15, I'd get laughed at trying to get into a Laker game, even if it was, standing room, not even in a seat, like whatever. Like, tickets to Laker games are very expensive, and a big reason for that not only was the market that they're in, the team that they have, the players that they have to sell those tickets and everything, but a lot of that, is due to the league growing, the league getting more money, and there's just a lot of opportunity there. So scrapping the playoffs or NBA season would really hurt the league financially, and you'd see it impact teams a lot, teams and players, and that's a big deal. So I'm excited to see what happens with this. Really curious, I guess, more than anything. There's a lot of questions. I think the logistics of it would be really, really can be really tricky. I don't know. They'd have to work out kind of scheduling with the TV, the networks, and with TNT, with ESPN, ABC usually gets the NBA Finals, and then ESPN and TNT kind of rotate the two conference finals. One year, one will get the Western Conference Finals, and then they'll get the Eastern Finals the next year. But they'd have to kind of figure that out. There's some NBA TV playoff games, which I think NBA TV still it's the same umbrella as TNT with Turner. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of tricky things that they have to deal with on that aspect of it. But there's also where the games are going to be played. Everything seems to be pointing towards Orlando. I know there's been talk of the league having two different venues, which is something that I would like to see. Putting, I think, even if you went straight to the playoffs, which sounds like it is a possibility, but it sounds like they want to play about 5 to 10 regular season games to kind of wrap up the regular season and then go into the playoffs. I don't know how. I mean, I don't really agree with that very much, just because there's only a handful of teams that are out of the playoff picture right now on the outside looking in that playing even 10 games would really mean much for. You look in the Eastern Conference, I mean, the Wizards are 5.5 games behind the Orlando Magic for the 8th seed. So playing 10 games really isn't going to do them any good. They would have to kind of hope that the Magic lose probably 8 out of 10 of those at least and have the Wizards finish really, really strong. So, I mean, the 8 playoff teams in the East are pretty much set. In the West, I mean, it's fairly similar. The Grizzlies have a 3.5 game lead, 4 up in the loss column on the Portland Trailblazers. They've got a pretty nice little cushion there. So playing 10 games, it would be a very low likelihood that they would fall to 9 behind Portland or New Orleans or Sacramento or San Antonio. There's kind of 4 teams all bunched up right there, but it's like I said, they're either 3 or 4 games back in the loss column. So playing even 5 games, I mean, Memphis would have to win 2, 3, just to wrap it up. So. And that's with the other teams, I mean, going undefeated, even if it was just 5 games. If it's 10 games, I mean, I don't know. For me, personally, I think, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have these teams put their players at that risk for games that don't mean much. Like if you had the Golden State Warriors or the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Suns, like these teams that are at the bottom of the standings that aren't going to make the playoffs, and basically are just playing for lottery odds at this point. It doesn't really make sense to incorporate them into this. I know, there's, they could make more money, make the league more money if there's just more games played. But I think at this point you just kind of have to take what you can get if you're the league. And I think the emphasis needs to be on the playoffs. And with, it'd be one thing if one of the conferences, the 9 seed was a game out, right? Like they're right there. But in the East, like I said, the Wizards are 5.5 games back. In the West, the Trailblazers and the Pelicans, Pelicans, and Kings are all 3.5 games out of the 8th seed. So it's a pretty good cushion. It's not insurmountable, like if they finish the regular season, but it's still a pretty good gap to try and make up. So maybe, the answer is having a couple play-in games. I could get behind that, if you wanted to do, because they've kind of toyed around. You've seen that possibility earlier in the year of kind of revamping playoff formatting and having like the 7 seed play the 10 seed and the 8 seed playing the 9 seed and like play-in games to get those final 2 playoff spots. Like something like that I could get behind if it's like one game, and teams I think would be okay with playing for that, and you wouldn't have to have those bottom feeder teams playing for no reason, just having no incentive to play other than making the league money. I think a lot of players on those teams would rather just call it a season, start gearing up for next year, and just not putting themselves at risk. So I don't know. I don't know what the exact answer is. Here in a few minutes, I'm going to kind of give you what I would do. But there's a lot of things that the NBA has to kind of figure out. So it's not as easy as really a lot of people have suggested if they do resume. I think there's a lot of logistic stuff that they have to figure out. And one of the issues is they've talked about having kind of a training camp at the teams in the team's city, I think, basically the team's facilities, because there's been a lot of safety measures being taken at the team's facilities, opening up workouts for their players. I think Danny Green talked about it on a podcast. I saw a quote from him very recently that the Lakers are taking the safety precautions very, very seriously for players going into the team's facility to work out, and there's kind of a lot of safety measures that they have to take and go through just to go work out at the facility. So it's good to see that the Lakers are taking that seriously, and I'm sure a lot of the other teams are as well. But a lot of players and team staff don't want to show up because a lot of players right now are kind of all around the country. They're not all of them are in their home city where they play home games, with their team. I think Kyle Lowry is training in Philadelphia. I think I was reading that earlier today. And, so he'd have to travel to Toronto for a training camp and then back to like Orlando, for example, if that's where the league picks up. So there's a lot of logistics that the league has to figure out. I think it would make more sense to just have the teams kind of gather all together instead of make players travel back to their team city and then all together. I think you could kind of cut out some of those trips and just have teams meet up. And if you can just find the right city with the adequate training facilities and resources, I think that would be really, really good. So a lot to still figure out. Obviously, it's gaining traction. It's gaining a lot of momentum. The league, it sounds like the NBA really, really wants to resume this season and really kind of salvage the rest of the year as best they can and not make this whole situation too financially damaging for the league. And that's good to hear. It's good to hear because, we all want the league to thrive. We all want the league to continue to grow and succeed. And that's, navigating this situation is going to be tough, but it might be necessary. It might be necessary to really not damage the league further than we've already seen with this shutdown. So, all right, I'm gonna give you guys take a quick break here and give you guys a word from our sponsors. And when I come back, I am going to talk about what my preference would be for the league's plan of attack for the rest of the season and the playoffs. And I'll have you guys let me know what you think. So I'll do that here in just a quick second. But before I do that, here is a quick message from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Did you know that in order to get your stimulus check, you had to have filed your taxes for the 2018 or 2019 tax year? If you haven't filed for 2018 or 2019, there's good news. The Tax Defense Group can rush e-file your taxes. They know that millions of Americans are struggling, and they want to make sure that you get your stimulus check sooner rather than later. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Due to the global pandemic and economic downturn, Writer Junkie is offering their resume writing service for only $100. And with a 3-day turnaround, you can't beat that price and delivery time. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Mention that you saw this ad on UCast Studios, and they'll get right to work. All right, so here's kind of my general preference, I guess. My preference of a general outline of what the NBA should do to finish off this season. So we know that they want to kind of centralize the teams and put a bubble or put teams in a bubble to really prevent people from going in or out and interacting with kind of the outside world, I guess, and just keep teams kind of quarantined. And I think that's absolutely smart. So I think that's what teams need to do. My preference, I guess, for this just to be safe, and I think it's the league's plan of attack, but we've really heard more and more about Orlando as kind of the central location for these teams. I don't know if they're planning on putting all 16 playoff teams in Orlando or what. I think it would be beneficial if you could have one West City and one East City. And I think it would probably make sense to have the West City be Las Vegas. Because as far as I know, Las Vegas is still kind of shut down right now. And I know it's you're going to have a bigger city. But I think with Vegas, you've got facilities there for teams to practice and to play. And while the city is normally very, very busy for obvious reasons, if it's still shut down, which I haven't read that it's not, if it's still shut down and like the strip is still shut down and there's not people roaming around there very often or very much, I think it would make sense to have the West teams play in Vegas and then the East teams play in Orlando. That way you're not putting 16 teams all in one area, and because that would be, even though they're spread spread around the city a little bit. It just feels like a lot to put in one location. But, I mean, I'm sure the NBA is looking into the logistics of that and can make it work. My preference would be to have the West teams play in Vegas or some other Western city that's deemed safe, and then the East teams play in Orlando, again, or another city that is deemed safe. And to just start with the playoffs with the current seeds right now. If you want to do a play-in game for, like I said kind of earlier, either the 8-9 or the 8-9 and the 7-10 to get those last two playoff spots, I'm good with that as long as it's one game for each of those. If it was up to me, I would just say these teams, we played about 65 games most of the season. These teams earned the top 8 seeds. Let's roll with these eight teams in each conference. So I would just basically give teams time for a training camp, and I would just say we're going to roll straight into the playoffs. Everybody's going to be kind of rusty and all this. Whereas, if you do those play-in games, maybe the two winners of those playoff games have kind of an advantage because they get that game under their belt, shake off the rust a little bit. But I guess to keep it a level playing field, I would steer away from that right now, and I would just jump straight into the playoffs. You can even think about shortening the playoff series if you want. Like, you can do kind of like the old days and make the first round a best-of-5 series. You could do stuff like that. Personally, I think you could try to basically use the normal playoff formatting. You just don't give teams 2 days off in between games. I mean, you might have to play some back-to-backs because I think ideally training camp would start for teams mid to late June, and then you're starting the playoffs mid-July. I think that's probably the best case scenario for the league. And if you do that, you can still have about a 2-month playoff run, maybe a month and a half or so. Because I just don't think having 2 days off in between games is going to be overly necessary when teams don't have to travel. Every team's going to be in the same location. There's no travel. So I think you could get the playoffs done in a pretty timely manner. And you wouldn't have to really expose teams to back-to-backs or anything like that. So I think you could keep things on a pretty good schedule by doing that, just by giving kind of each team 1 day off in between each game. So that's what I would do. I would kind of split the conferences. East goes in one city, West goes in one city. We start the playoffs. There's no more regular season games. We just jump straight in with the current standings, and we roll the ball out. No fans in the stands, and we play. You have testing obviously ready to go, and that's where it gets kind of tricky if a player tests positive, especially if it's a big time player. Do you kind of delay things for 2 weeks, or what do you do? The league really has to look into that stuff. So hopefully in any scenario, no player tests positive. Hopefully there would be a strict bubble in force, and people wouldn't be going out in any capacity and, risking exposure. But at the same time, you'd be asking these guys to be basically quarantined for another 2 months and not do anything. I mean, they wouldn't be able to really see their family or anything, which, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that the league has to figure out on that front. Another thing is I've kind of wondered about is media availability, because you see, I mean, one thing I always kind of look forward to after playoff games is the press conferences and see what players and coaches are saying, talking about adjustments, stuff like that. And obviously there's press conferences, there's media gathered, there's media scrums where people come in very close contact with one another, and to interview players and stuff like that. Obviously LeBron and Anthony Davis always have big crowds around them for those. So would media be limited? Would they limit, just a few media members for each team? I think the smart bet would be to have these players have press conferences, but doing it over video conferencing. You'd still have, media members allowed to ask the questions that they want. Players would answer the questions, and you don't have to bring people close together. So I think that's, in terms of the media and limiting risk and exposure, stuff like that, you could limit these press conferences to video conferences. They could be Zoom. I mean, we've seen teams do that already, interviewing players and coaches and whoever, and TV networks doing the same thing, interviewing just through video. So I think there's ways that you can do that. But I did kind of wonder what the league would do with that, because media is important for the league, even though they can be kind of annoying to a lot of people. But yeah. I mean, it sounds simple, but again, there are a lot of different things to figure out and a lot of situations to prepare for that the league really has to take all of that into consideration. So it's something that will be really interesting to see how they handle it and how they're prepared for it. And I'm curious. I'm really, really curious to see how they handle this situation. I want to see playoff basketball. I really want to see a champion crowned. Hopefully it's the Lakers, but I just want to see at least the Lakers get a chance, and that might be selfish of me. It might be selfish of fans to want to see the games played again, but like I said, the financial impact of not having the playoffs and not resuming this season could be very damaging to the league. And I think players are on board with at least trying to play. So it sounds like it's going to happen at some point. The question is when. And I think we'll have basketball back in July. I just would prefer that they don't play any more regular season games. Just start the playoffs. Let's try and kind of get this thing done and over with as quickly as we can while being reasonable about it. And then, the finals can be early September or whatever. And then you can roll right into the draft. You can roll right into free agency after that. And then you can still have a full off season and start next season around Christmas. I know that's been kind of the idea floated out there, starting the next season on Christmas Day, which would be awesome. The 2011 lockout year where they started on Christmas was really, really fun. It was really cool because that's always been something me and my family does. We will watch the Lakers play on Christmas. It's like watching the games, the NFL games on Thanksgiving. A lot of people watch the Cowboys and the Lions play on Thanksgiving. Probably more so the Cowboys than the Lions, but yeah, that's what I would do. I'd like to see them split the two teams into two different cities, just start the playoffs, no fans, keep players locked up basically in a bubble, keep them in that bubble, and hopefully players abide by the rules and can finish out this season, and we can crown an NBA champion. So something to monitor moving forward, but it sounds like it's going to happen at some point. The question is when, where, and how. So, or three questions, I guess. But yeah, something that'll be very, very interesting to watch, and hopefully we get good news and we can safely resume the NBA season and play the playoffs and crown a champion. So, all right, well, that's going to do it. Let me know what you guys think, what you think the league should do. Do you think I'm wrong? I'm probably wrong a lot of times, but let me know. Let me know in a YouTube comment, and let me know what you think the league should do, what you would do if you were in charge, all that stuff. Let me know. So thanks again, guys, for listening. I think I say this every time, but I really, really do appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate those of you that support the podcast, that support Lakers Outsiders and UCast Studios. It really does mean a lot to me. So, again, be sure to subscribe to Lakers Outsiders and UCast Studios on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow Lakers Outsiders on Twitter and Instagram at Lakers Outsiders, and you can like us on Facebook, and then follow me on Twitter at Gary Kester. And, of course, you can find everything up on LakersOutsiders.com. So, I'm going to get out of here. Hopefully we got some more good NBA news in the coming days, in the coming weeks, whatever, and then we'll go from there. So thanks again, guys, for listening. But until next time, this is Gary Kester with the Lakers Outsiders, signing off.